everyone, my name is Benjamin Harris, and this is the Harris History Hour. A lot of you may not know me, but you definitely know my wife Brittany. It's a beautiful day out here today in the Fair Oaks courtyard. As you can see, beautiful sunny April day, just perfect. So this is the Harris History Hour, where we're going to be talking about interesting, weird, and funny things in history. First, we're going to start with this book, just a couple stories, called Bad Days in History. Bad Days in History goes through every single day of the year, and it talks about someone who had just a bad day, or a group of people. So today's recording is on April 5th. So we're going to start with that. I know a lot of you like sports, so that's what we're going to start with first. This one's called A Hard Day's Night for the University of Michigan's Fab Five. I don't think the Beatles went to the University of Michigan, but I guess we'll find out. They were Wolverine rock stars, 5 dazzling players, all sophomores at the University of Michigan, ready to pounce in their much imitated saggy shorts, black Nikes, and black socks pulled away up high. The Fab Five, as they were known, had already shot to fame the year before when they became the first all-freshman starters to reach the NCAA championship. They lost to Duke, but now they were back. Ready and predatory as they sauntered onto the court to face the University of North Carolina Tar Heels for the title. "Y'all are gonna lose the game," pronounced Wolverines forward Chris Webber, the NCAA men's basketball first-team All-American. Before the night was over, though, the arrogant boast would bite Webber right in the behind, reduced as he was to mortifying shame. With less than 30 seconds remaining in the game, and Michigan trailing by 2 points, Webber grabbed a defensive rebound. With the rest of the Wolverines' primary ball handlers already up court, Webber headed up the court and took the ball to the baseline. But he was double-teamed, which prompted him to make one of the biggest blunders in basketball history. With no timeouts remaining, Webber called a timeout. A lot of you may know, basketball fans, that means a technical foul. The Tar Heels gained 2 more points from the resulting technical foul, immediately after which they clinched the game 77-71 with 2 more successful foul shots. As the rest of the Fab Five stood stunned, Webber cried out, "I cost our team the game." So next, we're going to talk about a very interesting and not well-known president. The reason why he wasn't well-known is because he was one of the shortest presidencies ever. This one was on March 4th, 1841. It's called Deadly Dull, the Fatal Inaugural Address. He was America's first manufactured candidate, a Virginia aristocrat transformed by the Whig Party into a hard cider-swillin', log cabin livin' everyman. Certainly, William Henry Harrison had served ably as a general in the War of 1812, as well as against Tecumseh's Indian Confederation, but there had been very little to distinguish him in the decades since. It was that very blandness, in fact, that made him the perfect choice for presidential contender, a blank canvas upon which the Whigs could create their own image. Thus, Harrison became a frontier legend and hero of the previously obscured Battle of Tippecanoe. Not tipping canoes, which I've done a few times, but Tippecanoe. And all he had to do during the campaign against the incumbent, Martin Van Buren, was to avoid any controversial issues and keep his mouth shut. Harrison compiled so thoroughly with the gag order that the Democrats took to calling him General Mum. Alas, the epithet wouldn't endure. Harrison and his running mate, John Tyler, popularized together in the ditty Tippecanoe and Tyler Too, defeated Van Buren handily, after which the torrent of words that must have been building in the silenced candidate burst forth in the longest, most excruciatingly boring inaugural address ever delivered. The crowds gathered at the U.S. Capitol in the freezing cold of that early March day must have gained some intimation of the torture that was to follow when Harrison began his address with this laboriously overwrought sentence. I hope you're ready for this. This is quite exciting. called from a retirement which I had supposed was to continue for the resident of my life to fill the chief executive office of this great and free nation, I appear before you, fellow citizens, to take the oath which the Constitution prescribes as a necessary qualification for the performance of its duties, and in obedience to a custom coeval with our government and what I believe to be our expectations, I proceed to present to you a summary of the principles which will govern me in the discharge of the duties which I shall be called upon to perform. I want everyone to keep in mind there was not a single period in that sentence until the very end. For over 2 hours, Harrison blathered on, his address peppered throughout with odd references to ancient Rome. But it could have been worse. The president-elect had Daniel Webster to edit the speech, which at least shortened it a bit. Indeed, Webster later boasted that he killed 17 Roman proconsuls as dead as smelts, every one of them. As much of an ordeal the never-ending address was to the audience, it proved fatal to Harrison. He had delivered it without a coat, and developed a cold as a result. That turned to pneumonia, and within a month, Harrison became the first U.S. president to die in office, quite literally bored to death. So I think we've heard enough about bad days in history. So now, we're going to talk a little about history, but it's more about travel. So this book right here is called Atlas Obscura, an explorer's guide to the world's hidden wonders. This is a very interesting book that some of my coworkers had bought me about a year ago, and I just love it because it goes all over the world telling about very weird and strange and different places. Since we're all in the Midwest and we can't really travel a whole lot right now, I thought let's talk about some strange places in the Midwest. So first, we are going to talk about Nebraska. This is in a town called Alliance, Nebraska, which is north of Tacoma, where Highway 1 meets 81st Street. We're going to talk about Carhenge, and you can see Carhenge right here at the bottom. It's exactly what you think it is. England has Stonehenge. Nebraska has Carhenge. It's pretty much the same thing, give or take a few millennia of technological advances. After studying Stonehenge in England, Carhenge creator Jim Reinders returned to the family farm in Alliance with a plan to create a replica of the prehistoric monument using junkyard automobiles. In the summer of 1987, with the help of family members, Reinders assembled 39 cars, all spray-painted gray, into a 96-foot wide circle, roughly the same dimensions as Stonehenge. The creation was inaugurated on the summer solstice with champagne, song, poetry, and a play written by the members of the Reinders family. In addition to providing an intriguing roadside stop for travelers, Carhenge is a memorial to Reinders' father, who lived on the farm where the monument stands. And next, we're going to go to North Dakota. And as you can see here, a little bit of ancient Egypt apparently came to North Dakota. And this is called the Nakoma Pyramid, in Nakoma, North Dakota. In a field behind a fence lies a 79-foot tall, sinister-looking pyramidal frustum, a pyramid with the top cut off. This gray structure and the clusters of exhaust towers beside it look like an occult monument, or perhaps a bit of Egyptian architecture misplaced in the Great Plains. In fact, they are the remnants of an anti-missile complex constructed during the Cold War. The Stanley R. Michelson Safeguard Complex, as it was known, was built to house anti-ballistic missiles capable of intercepting incoming Soviet rockets. Radar inside the topless pyramid scanned the skies while 100 missiles underground sat ready to launch against a Russian attack. Built at great expense, the Safeguard Complex was nonetheless short-lived. It became operational on October 1st, 1975, one day before Congress voted to end the Safeguard program and decommission the Nakoma site. That wasn't open for very long, was it? Just one day. Okay. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the place where I was born, South Dakota. Now, I know a lot of you have been to South Dakota, and specifically in Rapid City, South Dakota. We're actually going to talk about that twice, once now and once towards the end. First thing I'm going to talk about in Rapid City is called Thunderhead Falls. To see this 30-foot waterfall, you'll need to journey 600 feet into a mountain. Thunderhead Falls is located in the tunnels of a disused gold mine established in the 1870s. To the miners tunneling for treasure, the gushing torrent that spewed forth was an inconvenient surprise amid more general disappointment. The mine never yielded any gold and was abandoned by the time the 20th century rolled around. With no gold in them hills, Thunderhead Falls was forgotten until 1949, when Vera Eklund boarded a sightseeing train from Rapid City to Mystic and noticed a stream of water flowing down the side of a mountain. Eklund and her husband, Albert, returned to the site to track down the source of the stream and found the underground waterfall. The Eklunds acquired the land and opened Thunderhead Falls to the public as a tourist attraction the following year. With a tromp throughout the misty tunnels, you too can experience the highs and lows of the gold rush days. And this is about 10 miles from Rapid City along Highway 44 West. All right. And again, like I said, we'll be talking about Rapid City again soon enough. I know I just said I was born in South Dakota, but when I think about it, I was really raised in Wisconsin. It will always be in my heart. And what's the one place we all know that's very strange in Wisconsin? I'm sure a lot of you have been there. Yep, you guessed it. We're gonna go to the House on the Rock in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And here, I'm gonna show you a quick picture. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this carousel running many, many times. We used to go there all the time as a kid, and I used to absolutely love going to the House on the Rock. Opened to the public in 1960, this attraction is a window into the unusual mind of Alex Jordan, who built the home as a weekend retreat. Jordan was a collector of eclectic tastes. Over decades, he filled the house with an astounding array of objects: pipe organs, dollhouses, antique weapons, coin-operated music machines, chandeliers, and miniature circuses, to name a few. Jordan died in 1989, but his house of treasure lives on. The collection takes hours to walk through and has induced sensory overload. Two parts of the house really stand out: the carousel room, which I just showed you a picture of, and the infinity room. The carousel room contains the world's largest merry-go-round, featuring 269 animals, none of which are horses. The infinity room, built in 1985, is a cantilevered, glass-walled hallway that extends 218 feet out over the valley. A walk through the house raises a lot of questions. Is this all real? Why is that massive sea monster battling a giant squid? And how does it relate to the robot orchestra? Don't look for answers, just marvel. Next, we're gonna head a little further from Spring Green to Rhinelander, Wisconsin, at the Kovac Planetarium. On an October afternoon in 1996, Frank Kovac and his fellow Boy Scouts ventured to Mud Creek Observatory and waited for the sun to set so they could gaze at the universe. But when it was finally dark, cloud cover made stargazing impossible. Annoyed at the clouds for, in his words, obscuring the universe, Kovac decided to create his own celestial sphere. He spent a decade building a 2-ton, 22-foot-wide rotating globe and painting the interior with every northern hemisphere star visible to the naked eye. The Kovac Planetarium is only the 4th mechanical globe ever created. Kovac treats visitors to a sky show that lives up to its motto: Kovac Planetarium, where the universe revolves around you. The final thing I'm going to talk about in Wisconsin is actually very near my hometown and where my parents live, La Crosse, Wisconsin. There is a bike trail called the Sparta Elroy Trail. This trail was built in the 1870s and had to be cut through the bluffs and through a lot of limestone and rock. It was very, very difficult to build this, but it connected all the way to Chicago, went through Madison, and even connected up to Minneapolis. This line was run by the Chicago Northwest Rail Line. Unfortunately, in the 1950s, Chicago Northwest Railway decided they didn't want to go through this really tough terrain, really hilly terrain. So they decided, you know what, we're going to build a bypass. So then in 1964, this rail line was shut down. Fortunately for us, especially someone who rides bike almost every day, they decided to turn it into Elroy Sparta Bike Trail. And there you'll find 35 miles of a bike trail on this old rail line. And the trail itself is actually made from the old limestone that they dug out when they built the original rail line. It's a very fun place to go, very fun to bike on, and the biggest feature is 3 giant train tunnels that you have to go through. Now you're required by law when you go through to have a flashlight, because you can't even see your hand in front of you, it's so dark in there. You know about 3 miles before you come that you're going to be there, because there's a giant gust of cool air coming when you make it. And then of course you can't forget to stop by Tunnel Tom's shack. Tunnel Tom is a guy who lived there his entire life right on this line. He will tell you stories about when the Chicago Northwest Railway was still running, the health benefits of peanut butter, and how he became a millionaire selling his farm to Walmart. But he's also a good man and will sell you flashlights, bike inner tubes, any sort of snack or drink at a very fair price. Alright, I think you're all probably sick of hearing about Wisconsin. So let's go to Iowa for the National Hobo Convention in Britt, Iowa. Since 1900, the town of Britt has played host to the annual National Hobo Convention, when the country's self-defined hobos gather to feast, parade, and elect their hobo king and queen. According to the Hobo Foundation, which operates Britt's Hobo Museum, a hobo is defined as a traveling worker. The Hobo Code, created in 1889, mandates cleanliness, respect for the law, responsible alcohol consumption, and lending a hand to fellow hobos in need. The tight-knit nature of the hobo community is evident during the 4-day convention, when attendees all camp together in the hobo jungle beside the railroad track. The hobos participate in poetry readings, craft shows, and a memorial service for friends who have passed on during the year. I'm just going to read one more thing, and we are going to go into Minnesota, specifically to Minneapolis, where I currently live. I'm sure some of you have been to this place. It's actually at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, on campus. It's called the World's Quietest Room. You may think silence is peaceful until you visit Orfield Laboratories. The lab is home to an anechoic chamber, a room that has no echo. 99.99% of all sound made inside the chamber is absorbed by bouncy, 3-foot-thick foam wedges that cover every surface. Within seconds of entering, you will notice sounds you don't usually hear. The beat of your heart, the flow of your breath, and even the gurgling of your digestive system start to become unnerving, so make sure you eat before you go there. Visitors often become disoriented, especially if lab founder Stephen Orfield turns out the lights. I am a little afraid of the dark, so I wouldn't want to do that. Most don't last beyond a few minutes. Half an hour is unimaginable. Manufacturers use the quiet room during product testing to gauge the volume of switches, displays, and other components. The chamber has been Guinness certified as the quietest place in the world, with an ambient noise level of -9 decibels. Just to put it in perspective, a quiet bedroom at night is around 30 decibels. That's very, very quiet. Well, thank you all for taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed your time, and I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.